community from the UK on this Thursday morning, 23rd March 2023, and any government corrupted, trolling, abusing in authority servants who are trolling my social media daily and who surround me every day, as they are right now. Got some kind of optic sensory circuitry looking in from all various angles above the ceiling in my mother's house and from the walls next door with the neighbours who they conspire with, who sit there silently all day. And that network, as a lot of TIs know, we've been in the programme for a very long time, they're using the Wi-Fi system to network illegal, criminal, planned, criminally organised, corrupted and abusing of authority, surveillance, monitoring, stroke, research, clinical close-up research studies in our everyday sociology, human behavioural living activities. So as I'm doing this now, they're sound recording me, watching my body language, facial expressions, eye movements if I'm looking at my phone. And it's obvious, yeah, it's corrupted, racketeering, targeting networks, which involves a lot of corrupted individuals who are non-corrupted government servants need to root out, expose and strike off and imprison, linked to their local council authority, medical and public health sectors. There's a lot of evil psychiatrists, psychologists, neuroscientists, social workers out there who target with the moonlighting, abusing of authority, undercover police force, contractors, armed forces mercenaries and community members who they protect. It's all part of the targeting programme. And as you can see from this documentary, it states in there that the main psychiatrists, psychologists, neuroscientists all work together. And when we're targeting TIs, a lot of it is to create patience. Yeah, so the longer it goes on, we're doing all kinds of clinical close-up studies and research, and we've got all various techniques, strategies, apparatus, equipment, devices, and cyber security knowledge, and that's why they surround us every day to intercept all our communications, watch everything we do, edit it all, and when they're abusers of authority and they're desperate, they're fraudsters wanting to misdiagnose. So they can use similar sized people in the community, staged actors, set up stage scenarios, film them individuals, volunteers, or people already have had in care before, who could have consented to it, or it's non-consented, depending on whether they're filming. I'm going to edit it all and try and make out that it's a targeted individual who's got his disabilities, mentally or physical, to try and label the TI, and then they do illegal internet networking. And that network again is made up of social workers who they can send round to illegally assess TIs, and they assess them in psychiatry and mental health. There's no blood tests to analyse whether targets have got mental health illnesses. So that's where they use staged actors and staged scenarios, desperate to label and state whoever they're networking to that the target has got mental and physical disabilities, one or the other or both. And as you can see from this documentary, they rely on patients, on TIs, if they come round and knocking, telling them of what they're going through. And that's all part of the targeting programme. Yeah, they try and put constant pressure on TIs, constant radiation through all the various technologies they've got, apparatus and equipment they've got surrounding the TIs, the dirty electric, the EMF, radio frequencies, directed energy weapons, microwave weapons. And they just do this 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, depending on how desperate they are, to try and label, destroy the target, and try and goad, bait, entrap the target into reactions which they'll film due to the setup around TIs. It varies on each TI worldwide, but in my experience, in my position now, they're surrounding me every day, in my mother's home or in my home, anywhere I go. Yeah, it's constant 24-hour pressure, constant 24-hour capturing of illegal studies and research, and trying to entrap us in some kind of reaction, whether it's a facial reaction, a bodily reaction, an eye reaction. That's why we're looking into targets' eyes. If you know about the mental health system and the social workers and the mental health administrators, they make a beeline for your eyes straight away. And the covert operators mentioned it for a long time around me. Look at the state of his eyes, hoping they go to dark purpley colour or to a colour which they think they can try and call their networking to assess, to ponder on, debate whether it's worth sending social workers around to try and talk to the target. And depending on what the target says, they use it against them to try and analyse them and to try and assess them and then to try and misdiagnose them. So I'm playing 2 parts to this documentary. The link will be in the description box. Plenty of information in the description boxes that I've put out over the years.
All of its many forms, anxiety is still not easy to see with the naked eye. Today, millions in research dollars are spent on neuroscience in the hopes of finding the next big breakthrough.
Alright, so what we have here is we have an animal that's been implanted with fiber optics directed at a part of the brain called the hippocampus that we think is important for anxiety-like behavior. This maze measures the animal's innate anxiety and its innate fear of open spaces. When we keep the light off, the animal will behave like a normal mouse. It'll basically spend all its time in these closed parts of the maze. When we turn on the light and activate these specific circuits, the animal will now start to explore the open arms of the maze. So that suggests that we can regulate the animal's anxiety state. And so if we can discover new circuits in the brain, we can now create better drugs to alleviate anxiety in humans.
While researchers try to map anxiety in the brain, the search is on for the genes that trigger it all.
And a lot of TIs can relate to that. As you can see, they've done studies on rats, on mice, on animals, on monkeys, in the quest for neuroscience. And the sensory circuitry, the EMF, the dirty electric, the microwave, the directed energy weapons plays a big part. Lasers, satellites, what you just seen then in that study of that mouse. Yeah, they're messing around with the neural pathways. And that's what they're doing to TIs in their homes when they're sleeping, when they're sitting there around in their homes, whether on the computers, phones, laptops, devices, or watching TV. Yeah, they're doing all the psyops to try and get your neurons activated. And when they hate TIs, they want to dysfunctional and send the neurons haywire. So that's why it's a 24-hour psyops. When targets go out, yeah, they've got all the psyops going on around them, hoping they disorientate them. Or do a staged scenario with staged actors, hoping to get them angry, stressed out, anxious. And if they can get them symptoms, what we're looking for, produced, induced in the TI, They try and send their network round to go and visit them and have a network of community members who are corrupted, making phone calls to their targeting system, labelling, slandering TIs as scripted, defrauding witness makers, statement makers. So what they've been assigned to do, to go and spy on the TI, while the TI's being put under constant pressure.
Psychiatric disorders run in families, and that basically tells you that there is a vulnerable genetic terrain in certain individuals. We are only at the top of the iceberg. We found a few of the genes involved, but probably more than 90% are still missing.
For now, anxiety is understood basically as a list of symptoms, observed by patients and doctors and collated since 1952 in what's known as the Bible of Psychiatry, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or simply the DSM.
The role of the DSM is really very simple. It's a long list of mental disorders, and it helps us to locate our patients within that spectrum of psychological suffering. We can't take a brain picture and we have no blood test to tell us, oh yes, this is anxiety. We depend entirely on patients telling us how they're feeling.
The most important function of the diagnostic manual is to set the boundary between normality and psychiatric illness. Now, the trouble with this is that there is no clear boundary.
Already, vague definitions of anxiety in the DSM make it easy to overdiagnose.
Homosexuality used to be in the DSM.
Right, yeah.
18-year-old boy, so it's, girls.
In New York, Jessica Scott has been reading the DSM out of curiosity about her own anxiety. Tonight, she's decided to self-diagnose with her friends and see how many of them meet the threshold of an anxiety disorder.
Let's take a. I'm curious though. Let's take a look in the DSM. This is the diagnostic criteria for generalized anxiety disorder. Okay. So let's see what it says and let's see what we think about it.
Because now everything's a syndrome.
A. Excessive anxiety and worry, apprehensive expectation, occurring more days than not for at least 6 months. 45 years.
All right, who wants to read the next two of these? Because this is giving me a headache. Restlessness or feeling keyed up or on edge. Check. Easily fatigued. Yes. Difficulty concentrating or mind going blank.
This is perimenopausal.
Well, that is also perimenopausal. Muscle tension, sleep disturbance, difficulty falling or staying asleep, all of the above.
Okay, so here's the thing. Everybody in the world has been experiencing anxiety. So what's the label that we're all experiencing?
Well, for you, it's
Generalized anxiety. For you, yeah.
Using the DSM to diagnose anxiety at a dinner party is, of course, far from an exact science. But the same is true even for the professionals in a case where the patient is genuinely on the fence.
Can I turn left out of here?
Bike! Jesus. Oh, don't do this to me.
And so, like them reps, you'll sit round the dinner table drinking and discussing symptoms. But TIs, when you set up all this illegal criminal practicing, surveillance, stroke studies, research around you, and all the people that they're networking to, these rogue covert abusers, and the technology they've set up around TIs, technical sophisticated setup, they are networking to the local abusers of authority within the establishment, which the non-corrupted government servants have to root out. And they're also allowing community members in your local area and a targeted network in your country, or worldwide as well. They allow them to view what the TI is going through The local abusing and authority network will meet up in the offices, in the cinema rooms, in the organisations that have got the monitors set up to watch the target in their own homes. And they can watch from the comfort of their own homes if they've got a link to the covert abusers set up around TI's homes. And the community members who do the targeting with them, the conspirators, the overt operators they use, or the mercenaries they use, the contractors, they also set up their own social media discussions and meetings to re-strategise each day, to see what else they can do to the TIs, to set up scripts, throwing in loads of names for the psyops who do around TIs, and to discuss what they're seeing and whether they can carry on making phone calls about the TIs to the corrupted community targeting abusing an authority network in the public health sectors. Staged actors being used as phone callers, witness makers, statement makers. And they do this on a daily basis, week after week, month after month, year after year, for as long as they think they can dig the heels in and keep maintaining the technical sophisticated setup around TIs and the stalking of the TIs wherever they go.
Underlying problem is.
Medicalization is a huge, huge issue. And psychiatry is the easiest area to medicalize because we don't have the biological gold standard.
The country is bathing itself in prescribed drugs. There's already an enormously high rate of diagnosis of anxiety disorders. In a recent study, it turned out that by age 32, 50% of the population might qualify for an anxiety disorder. Get that. Age 32, 50% of the population might qualify for an anxiety disorder.
To qualify, patients must meet the criteria published in the DSM. It's a document that is always being revised, often to include more and more symptoms and new diagnoses. It's a trend that worries former chairperson Dr. Alan Francis.
It seems like the system is way too loose already. And what DSM-5 is suggesting is to open the gates way wider and make it much easier to get an anxiety disorder. There's a new proposal for a diagnosis of mixed anxiety depression that would be, I think, very much equivalent to the everyday worries, tensions, stresses, problems that all people have. And this is likely to become, from nowhere, the most common diagnosis in psychiatry. This would be a needless increase of psychiatric diagnosis, a medicalization of normality, making pathological the worries and troubles that are a natural part of the human condition, and that we shouldn't turn routinely into a medical disorder.
One of the doctors charged with reviewing anxiety disorders for the new DSM is Helen Blair Simpson.
Mixed anxiety depression is a hotly contested issue. This is something that people worry about, and there's always that sort of balance between how do you make sure someone who's ill gets the diagnosis, and how do you make sure that someone who's not ill doesn't?
This session really continues the road to DSM-5.
Perhaps the most important psychiatrist in the world today is Dr. David Kupfer. As chair of the DSM-5 task force, he is the man with the final say on what will be and what won't be a mental illness.
What we all were asking ourselves to do was to basically look at everything that was in the DSM-4 and say, if it's working well, leave it alone. Nobody has been instructed to look for more disorders. We are making changes because we believe that it will serve us better in terms of dealing with patients and families.
I think that the DSM-5 has an important job to do, but it's doing just the opposite of what I would be suggesting. I think that the appropriate function of psychiatric diagnosis now should be to try to tame the tiger, to try to indicate in the manual with big black box warnings, this diagnosis is being overused. Here are the key steps to making sure that you're making this diagnosis appropriately. Instead, what DSM-5 is doing is opening the floodgates.
The number of diagnoses in the DSM system continues to increase. In reality, if you look at the different forms of illness, there are only 4 or 5 major forms of psychiatric illnesses. There aren't 400. This is a classic conflict between the splitters and the lumpers. Splitters are people who say we must make ever more finely differentiated distinctions among kinds of behavior that we consider to be pathological. The lumpers say, well, you know, there are only about 4 or 5 things that can really go wrong. I'm very much a lumper, but the future belongs to the splitters.
Leonardo da Vinci seems to have encrypted
Belongs to the splitters.
Imagine a society in which all the new disorders currently proposed for the DSM-5 were accepted and became real diagnoses to be used in everyday medical practice.
They'll go from period to period, from decade to decade, from saying homosexuality is a disorder to saying, you know, overeating is a disorder to saying whatever the thing of the day is that people are not necessarily comfortable with, that they may decide is disordered. So in this funny way, we've actually compartmentalized our entire sort of human personality into billable coding systems.
For example, my wife.
So as you can see from that last view, they haven't got labels, desperate to misdiagnose TIs when they set up a targeting network on TIs. And that's where the non-corrupted government servants in public health have to stamp out. You can't have corrupted abusing an authority, public health sectors, running around conspiring with rogue police officers, undercovers, private detective agencies, and community members, contractors, armed forces boys and girls, whether they're using rogue firemen, rogue NHS ambulance crew services, and the community members. You can't have them running around communities listing people because they've drawn up a list of who they want to target in the community to aid and abet their associates who work for the government. That's what's sitting on both sides of the fences. You've got people in government who know loads of corrupted people in the communities at the beck and call, who they use to aid and abet them to go and get targets so they can progress their careers and to experiment on them and to do illegal studies on them. And then they want to cover it all up. They're trying to misdiagnose TIs after they've put them through all this pressure, all this abuse, all this radiation, and then use their system to detain targets under false pretences, under major fraud, via their corrupted racketeering associates who work in the government. Some could be in the police force, some could be in the public health sectors and in judges and jurors, so-called family court protection courts. And that's how they hope to get away with it with TIs. Misdiagnose them and then cover up all their illegal surveillance monitoring, criminal practicing, criminal active, criminal minded approaches to setting up technical sophisticated technologies around TIs. And get away with all the studies linked to the various senior peers and to what they've studied, and getting together a network of like-minded psychiatrists, psychologists, neuroscientists, sociologists, and behavioural scientists to cover it all up. Who they're networking to. And then they use a lot of this illegal studies, research, and the surveillance monitoring campaigns they set up around TIs, edit it all to show to their juniors who want to be mental health administrators or work for the public sector That's who we're also networking to, or show them in their offices, in their organisations, in the so-called cinema rooms. And as TIs know, as is seen again in the last minute or so of what I've shown, they're trying to give all kinds of mental health symptoms and illnesses, trying to label TIs with anxiety, delusional beliefs, paranoia, and everything else that's in their journals that you've seen above certain individuals that they had in the public walkway that the CCTV system was visualising, and all of them various labels popped up, which they keep adding every year due to the times, as times go by. So TIs, that's what you've got to watch out for. You've got to watch out for these for their criminal practicing, criminal conniving, criminally planned approaches, and be careful what you say if they think they can swoop in like vultures and send their network of people around to try and interrogate you like police officers, or to try and get the information out of you by wanting you to speak to them about what you're going through. As we're saying in this documentary, they rely on patients telling them so that they can analyse what you said, do the legal assessment on criminal plan assessment on it all, and try and misdiagnose you due to what you said to them. So that's about it. Everyone digest it all so I can analyse it all. And take care, stay safe, and TIs, keep them at arm's bay. For all the corrupted government trolls who are listening around me now and will troll my social media and see this sometime today, you have to understand that TIs, veteran TIs have been in the programme for many years, to new TIs, the targeting system has been exposed. So as TIs, we suggest you pack it all in. And the non-corrupted government people, we want major investigations into your boys and girls who are criminal practicing with community members and rogue government surveillance monitoring teams, rogue private detectives, contractors, mercenaries and neighbours in the community who aid and abet them to be harboured in their homes or use equipment to move around TI's homes to whatever the TI is in their home. And that's what I'm going through. So everyone, have a good day. Over and out.